All right, everybody, welcome to yet another Autopsy Rantz. We have a lot of shit to talk about here. So much happens so fast in the world of politics and coronavirus and precious metals that there's just a lot of shit to talk about. And I guess the first place we can visit here, man, I got so many topics. The first place we can visit here is gold and silver. And even Bitcoin, because as most of you know who follow this stuff, we had the pullback that I had expected. Some of the past few precious metals videos I talked about the pullback that I was expecting. A lot of the market was expecting it because it was going up so fast. Gold obviously hit its new high, well over $2,000 an ounce. I think it got up to about $2,070 an ounce. Silver was up over 29, almost touching 30. And then we had the big pullback the other day. Even my mining stocks did awful that day. I'm still up for the last 3 or 4 months. I think about 4 months ago is when I started getting into them. I'm still plenty up, but that was by far the roughest day, probably since the March dip. But the prices are slowly coming back up. They are moving. Yeah, I was checking my stocks earlier today. They're going back up, so I think we had the pullback. Now, obviously, nothing goes up in a straight line, as everybody knows that follows stocks. So there are going to be, there are going to be some down days, but I expect a lot of up days, especially after some of the new information that's been coming out. But yeah, they are going back up. I was just in the store the other day buying some more war nickels because I found a really good deal on war nickels at my local coin shop. So I'm still stacking. I still have silver coming into my stack. Little bits of gold. I've backed off gold quite a bit because obviously gold's getting very expensive. But yeah, so basically the pullback that I predicted had happened. So right now gold is still well over 19. And think about this: when we talk about the pullback that happened, all that did basically was erase some of the gains we've had so far in August. So basically, it put us back to the end of July. And right now, I think it's sitting right about where it was at the end of July. Except for silver. Silver, I think, is actually a little bit higher now than it was at the end of July. So the pullback happened, and then we've kind of recovered. Now, will we get another big pullback? It's totally possible, especially with all the stuff going on. This coronavirus thing, the way it's worked with the economy and the way it's worked with all these different states, it's making it, I think, harder than normal to predict like what will happen with it. But there's going to be down days, there's going to be up days. I think overall your best bet is still going to be on gold and silver, and I'm starting to have a bit more appreciation for Bitcoin. I don't own any. Bitcoin is extremely volatile, but obviously you can't ignore the stats. Bitcoin has been doing very well. So all three of those, gold, silver, and even Bitcoin. Bitcoin I have way more skepticism about, but gold and silver they're going to be your best bets, man, because the Fed's just going to continue printing. And we're going to continue seeing the devaluing of the dollar. We've seen that with some of the reports that just recently came out with the CPI, which is already rigged, showing that, yes, prices are going up. I think they went up like 0.6% in this recent report. But keep stacking, guys. I would not sell off anything. I mean, obviously, don't leverage yourself if you're hurting. If you absolutely have to have the money, obviously, I would say, do what you have to do to get by. Keep your four walls up and all that sort of thing. But I do still think it's a very good investment. Don't be dissuaded by the pullback. Okay, so moving on, we have in other news, the Trump executive orders. I'm a few days behind on this one. This one actually didn't make as much of a fuss as I thought it would, and it should have, because I absolutely oppose the Trump executive orders. Because here's the problem, man. We just got the last president. We just got done with a president who spent 8 years basically governing by executive order. And the Republicans rightfully called that out for 8 years. Now, me personally, I'm the kind of guy who, gives a fuck about the ideas and the principles and the morals and the ethics and even the Constitution. So I don't like the idea that the president can legislate from the executive. I don't like that. There might be some things where you have an executive order where it's like, okay, it's more of an understandable thing where, there's a better reasoning behind it as far as like the legality of it, like where it's more appropriate. Well, this isn't. This is just straight up legislating from the executive. I do think it's completely unconstitutional. I do oppose those kinds of orders. I don't care who does them, and nobody else should care who does them. They're either right or they're wrong. And legislating from the executive is definitely wrong. So to cover some of what Trump is trying to do with this, he was trying to add the $400 week unemployment benefits instead of the $600, which I still think fails for the same reason. But $400 instead of $600 per week for unemployed benefits. Also, and that was the payroll tax cut, which is something I wanted to talk about a little bit. Because everybody knows I'm not a fan of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. I think they are the number one drivers of our national debt. I think they themselves are unconstitutional. And especially with Social Security, I think it is nothing short of a Ponzi scheme. It is a complete ripoff. It does not even come close to what I would find to be a legitimate role of the government, that they are supposed to run some sort of pension plan for you. And oh, by the way, you can't opt out. You're forced into it, and you have to pay. So there's that aspect of it. Then there's also the aspect that it's funded through payroll taxes. I hate taxes. Okay, everybody knows this. It's no surprise to you. I hate taxes, but payroll taxes are especially egregious. You know, they're maybe not quite as egregious as, say, property taxes, where you have to pay a tax on something you've already paid taxes on and you currently own. But a payroll tax really is what we would call a regressive tax. The people who need that money the most are the people who are hit the hardest by it. It's another, for those of you maybe who don't live in the United States, these taxes are along with your federal income tax, which is something else that I find egregious. The government also taxes you for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So these taxes come out of your weekly or bi-weekly, however often you get paid. I get paid every week, so I get to see the damage every week on my check stub. Even though it's direct deposited, I can look at my check stub. I like to know where everything's going, and I get to see how much the government steals out of my paycheck every week. So, these programs being funded through the payroll tax was a horrible idea in the first place. And I do support the payroll tax going. But again, unlike Donald Trump, regardless of what Bernie Sanders and the Democrats want to tell you, Donald Trump likes Social Security and he likes Medicare. Republicans like Social Security and they like Medicare. Why? Because they're fucking old. And partially because they've paid into it their whole lives. They feel like they deserve it because they've been forced to pay into it. And I completely understand that sentiment. The problem is, we have to cut this thing off somewhere. We have to do something. I am willing to take a complete 100% loss on all the money the government has stolen from me over the last 17 years of my life to pay for Social Security, just to keep my money now and start investing it and saving for myself, doing what I want to do with it, you know, almost like the free way to live your life and not being forced into programs. But, problem here, what Trump is doing with this payroll tax cut. Now, it hasn't been explained whether this is going to be forgiven. It actually looks like it's not going to be forgiven unless Trump wins the next election. That's sort of what is implied here. It's going to be deferred, which means it will be deferred until next year. You will get this payroll tax cut until the end of the year, and the difference will be basically decided next year whether or not it's going to be forgiven. So basically what this looks like, and it's really interesting how Trump played his hand here, this is actually it's a very smart political move. And of course it's dirty politics, because politics is dirty. It is a trap for the Democrats. So Donald Trump is going to play this out where he makes this executive order that I think is clearly unconstitutional. And the Democrats are going to have the option, as Nancy Pelosi has already said, this is, I believe she said, grossly unconstitutional. So Nancy Pelosi now will be forced to stop a plan that was going to provide direct relief to American voters. Now, on one hand, you have Trump, who is pretty much straightforward, trying to buy the vote of the voters. And then, on the other hand, you have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the Democrat mainstream. We'll see what the Biden-Harris campaign, we'll get to that. We'll see what they have to say about this. But they're basically stuck, because if the Democrats are going to be the people that are like, no, this is unconstitutional, we're going to shut it down. One, they don't have a fucking leg to stand on, because Obama did this for 8 years. They thought it was fine because they were getting what they wanted through Obama. Now they're going to say this is unconstitutional. That's on one hand. On the other hand, now they're going to be spun by Trump as the bad guys, because Trump's going to say, I tried to help. Look at this. Our Congress, look at it. Look at it. Look at what's going on in Congress. They can't come together and make anything happen, so I was trying to make this happen for you, the people. Which is brilliant politics. Brilliant politics. Of course it's shady as fuck because politics is shady as fuck. But that is the hand he'll get to play. Either they let it go through, and Trump gave a bunch of people money 3 months before election time, and they're going to remember that, or you can shut it down and have yourself look like the bad guy. So it's a really clever way that he played his hand here. It's, of course, again, it is shady. It is unconstitutional. But the Democrats, morally speaking, don't have a leg to stand on because they were okay with it when it was their guy doing the unconstitutional governing from the executive position. That's what they were for 8 fucking years. So they don't really have a leg to stand on morally against that. Politically, the leg they have to stand on, it's kind of been kicked out from underneath them by the president. So it was a really interesting way that got set up. We'll see what happens with the rest of that. But moving on into the Democrats, Kamala Harris, obviously, I did a video a couple of days ago, was chosen as Biden's vice presidential pick. And there's been so much golden content going around the Twitter sphere and YouTube about just how phony, unlikable, and just downright awful Kamala Harris is as a candidate. This is something that I had mentioned. I mentioned on the goddamn podcast, and I mentioned in that video on Tuesday that she doesn't really add anything that Biden would need. As some people pointed out, they're not going to win a state out of this because Kamala's from California. California was going blue anyways. California's not going to go for Trump. Didn't matter who ran. So they're not winning a state out of this. Joe Biden is already having to cover for the shit he's catching from progressives, especially over his part in the '94 crime bill. Well, Kamala Harris was a filthy prosecutor who did some really just downright awful things. Like awful things. Like, there's a lot of people who went to prison and had their lives ruined, lost their jobs, and had big marks on their background checks for future employment that are going to prevent them from getting jobs. Obviously, this is going to keep them impoverished because Kamala Harris locked them up for dumb shit like smoking weed, threatening to lock up single moms for their kids not going to school, and laughed about it. There's videos of this where she's laughing about it. It just, not only that, but it's going to be really interesting to see what, I don't think Pence will really jump on it, but Donald Trump is going to eat that alive in the debates. The fact that Biden picked a running mate who called him a racist and said that she believed the women who accused Biden of sexual assault. I honestly can't, I've said this from the beginning. I didn't care who it was. I couldn't wait for the next debates. I've been saying this since 2016. Oh, I can't wait for the re-election debates. I don't give a fuck who it is. It's going to be hilarious. So you have that, and here's another bit of craziness. So Kamala and Biden are running their campaign now, right? And they get together for the first time, and it seems like you're kind of getting a sense of what is going to be their direct platform against Donald Trump. We know it's going to be some orange man bad stuff, but what exactly are they going to hit him on? Because there are plenty of flaws in what Donald Trump has done. But of course they're going to go to the one area that I think is probably the most ridiculous area to try to attack Donald Trump. And apparently they are going to try to run on a Trump ruined the economy narrative. Now, I am like flabbergasted by this. Because I can't believe for a minute, even the people that absolutely hate Donald Trump are really going to be sold on that narrative. I think the only people who are going to be sold on that narrative, who are going to be like, okay, yeah, that's a good point, those are the people that were going to vote for Harris and Biden anyways. I don't see that winning over moderates or independents or any of the people that Biden and Harris really need. And for those of you who haven't been following some of the polls, I talked about this, it seems like it's becoming closer and closer as we move along. They're starting to tighten up in a lot of states. The gaps aren't nearly as big. Things are actually looking a lot better for a Trump re-election at this point than they had been since March or since April or maybe even May. Things are actually looking better for Trump now in terms of re-election than they were then. But I'm just stuck on this. Like, who is going to buy that? who is going to be swayed to, like, already, even we're in the midst of this coronavirus situation where all these states are locking down. Now, if you wanted to run on the Trump fumbled the coronavirus early on and, maybe we could have stopped this, if that's something you were going to run on, there's at least an argument to be made there. But you're really going to run on Trump took this great economy and fucked it all up? So I have a tweet from Kamala Harris here saying, Trump inherited the longest economic expansion in history from Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And then, like everything else he inherited, he ran it straight into the ground. Who's sold by that? Who that is not already completely drunk on lib Kool-Aid is sold by that? As if this fucking, like, virus never happened. And look, I have been nothing but critical on Trump for continuing the Obama, or if you give Biden didn't do shit with the fucking economy. If you want to give Obama credit for that, yeah, the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression happened under Obama, in the sense that the numbers got better with the Fed printing money and keeping interest rates at zero and just reinflating this giant bubble that is about to crush all of us because this can is getting too big to kick down the road. That economy, if you go by those same numbers, if you go by those exact same numbers that were under Barack Obama, if you thought Obama had a good economy before he left office, there is no way up until coronavirus you cannot say that the economy, by those same standards, was not better under Donald Trump. By almost every metric I can think of, if you buy those numbers. I have problems with this because I think those numbers are largely bullshit. I think Trump knew those numbers were largely bullshit before he got into office, because he did campaign on that. I don't think true unemployment ever got down to 3.5%. Though, if you think those numbers were right under Obama, which the mainstream does, then those numbers were you can't even argue that those numbers were better under Donald Trump. Up until March. Up until coronavirus. And by the way, the reports that are coming out now show that as far as unemployment goes, and obviously as far as the stock market goes, the stock market's back up over 28,000. Or the Dow is up over 28,000. So those numbers are back. Those numbers, what was the peak number under Obama? It was like 16? Was it 16,000? So as far as the Dow goes, those numbers are back up to where they were. 28,000 under the Dow. Unemployment numbers, every time a report comes out, we're actually beating the expectations for unemployment. So the unemployment is going back down. It's right around 10%. Official unemployment. Obviously, I have my problems with that, but I'm still saying, by the same metrics that we measured the Obama economy, and all the people who thought Obama did a great job with the economy, by those same metrics, Trump unarguably had better numbers up until coronavirus. So unless you're trying to convince people coronavirus never happened, and you're trying to convince people who are literally still stuck at home because they can't leave, because the government won't let them, you're going to try to convince those people that that's all because of Donald Trump? That you're not actually stuck home right now if you're unemployed, it's because Trump fucked up the economy? Who's buying that? Joe Biden goes on to say this.
We have an economic crisis with more than 16 million Americans. 16 million still out of work. Donald Trump is on track to break another record. On track to leave office with the worst jobs record of any American president in modern history. But instead of doing the hard work of meeting face-to-face with congressional leaders, Democrats and Republicans in the White House, like every other president has done in a crisis, to get Americans the relief they need and deserve, Donald Trump is on the golf course. If I told you this 3 years ago, you'd look at me like I was being crazy. He hasn't even met with the leadership. He doesn't have time, it appears.
That Trump would go down as the worst jobs president in history. By the way, that's not even if you count the current numbers of unemployment, that's just not true. Unemployment has been much higher than this several times just in the last century. So just by that metric alone, it's not true. But I really had never considered that they would actually run on a Trump fucked the economy line. I don't see who's sold on that. And look, dude, I'm going to defend whoever I think is right on a given issue. If I think Biden is right, I think Kamala Harris is right. If I think Donald Trump is right, I'm going to defend who I think is right, because I think that's just the moral thing to do. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be objective and say, Trump fucked up here, Kamala fucked up here, Biden fucked up here. Or when they're right, they're right. But goddamn, I'm so like amazed that their first night as like a unified campaign, are we ready to get to work? Yeah, bro. Harris, Biden, let's do this. And the things that they talk about is Trump fucking up the economy. Now that's just insanity. Now, Biden also had tweeted about Charlottesville. This was another another golden Biden tweet that we have. Let's see where it is. Okay, Biden on Charlottesville. 3 years ago today, white supremacists descended on Charlottesville with torches in hand and hate in their hearts. Our president said they were, quote, very fine people. It was clear then, and it's clear now. We are in a battle for the soul of the nation, and we must win. Well, look, Trump lies, and Trump lies a lot. Trump greatly exaggerates things. But this, I think, what makes this different is that if you're holding Trump to a standard where if Trump lies, you call him out, you don't win in terms of any sort of like ethical standing if you just ignore flat out lies from the guy that you would rather be in the Oval Office than Trump, right? So the Trump both sides line is out of context. This is a constant thing that they do. They were very fine people. You're saying Donald Trump said that the people who specifically murdered that woman in Charlottesville, did Donald Trump say that those were very fine people? No, he didn't. He said some of the people there, because at the time they were protesting the removal of statues, some of the people there were very fine people. And this goes into the both lines side. That is still, I see this shit all the time, it's still misrepresented. When Trump's talking about there were fine people on both sides, in the full clip that you can watch, Donald Trump is talking about the people who were there protesting against the removal of the Confederate statues and the people that were there wanting those statues removed. Now, amongst those crowd were people who were legit Nazis. And amongst that crowd were people who were Antifa. So not everybody there was good, but there were good people on both sides of that argument about the statues. I don't even know how that's difficult. But this is what I think draws a lot of people to Trump. When the coverage gets so obviously biased and misrepresents some very basic things that wouldn't be hard to cover, except that a lot of the times people want to do it for outrage points. It's like during the campaign in 2016, the Trump mocked a disabled reporter. Like, that's been debunked so many times, yet I still hear it. Trump was talking about a reporter who apparently had a disability. But the way that Trump was doing his mannerisms, the clip that constantly goes around where Trump's acting like a confused, like a retarded person, that's not the disability the man even has. The man has I guess like some kind of maybe a palsy or something. I don't even know exactly what he has. But the guy doesn't flail around like that. By the way, Trump did those same gestures when he was making fun of Ted Cruz. There used to be compilations that were going around YouTube about how Trump had those same basic mannerisms and attacks on different people he was talking about. But these people don't care. They don't care. They're going to use this for political gain, which is why I say all politics is dirty politics. This is a power grab. These are people who want control. They want power. They want to be somebody important whose name's going to go down in history, and they can control people with the power of the state. That's what this is. And it's probably also, part of it is why there's a lack of enthusiasm for some of these people. That's why voter turnout continues to go down. Like, Trump didn't really beat Hillary as much as people just didn't like Hillary. People were like, oh, fuck. And it just so happened to be more of those people were in swing states. It's basically that. But Harris doesn't help Joe Biden's enthusiasm. Like, I've officially seen now. I was with the wife at lunch yesterday, and I actually saw a Joe Jorgensen Spike Cohen bumper sticker. And I pointed out to her, I was like, oh wow, would you look at that? That officially means I have seen more visible support for the third-party libertarian candidate than I have for the Democrat nominee. Isn't that insane? Like, I've never seen a Biden bumper sticker. I see Trump shit all the time. Now, there's definitely enthusiasm for Trump because Trump is Trump. There's not enthusiasm for Joe Biden. The people that are voting for Joe Biden are literally the type that are just like, oh, fuck. I fucking hate Donald Trump. That's those people. Those are the people voting for Joe Biden. They don't love Joe Biden. They don't think Joe Biden's going to be some great warrior who's going to give us some awesome economy or something like that. They don't buy any of that shit. They're just voting for him because they hate Trump. And you know what? That might be enough. I'm not saying Joe Biden's definitely going to lose, but there's no enthusiasm for him. And since I mentioned Jo Jorgensen has, I don't know who she has on her staff that runs her Twitter, but we had another Twitter flub with Jo Jorgensen. Really mixed messaging, missed signals being sent here. It started out with this tweet. It was when Joe Biden had announced, or I gotta stop saying Joe Biden announced this. Joe Biden might still not even know who Kamala Harris is and that she's running as VP. Joe Biden's team had announced that Kamala Harris was going to be the VP nominee. And again, this is me calling out my own here. Jo Jorgensen's Twitter account says, I'm glad that Joe Biden has brought another woman into the race. The vice presidency shouldn't be a boys' club. When I think about the millions of girls and young women across America, I think they deserve a voice this year when it comes to the top job in the country, #elections. You know, Hillary Clinton could have wrote that tweet. Your tweet as the Libertarian Party nominee. We're the pro-liberty people. We're the freedom people. Of all the shit you could say about Kamala Harris, who is pro-drug war. She's been a prosecutor who's literally incarcerated people for marijuana. And done really shady shit as far as keeping them in prison past their sentences so they would be cheap labor for the state. There's a lot of fodder here for a libertarian. There's a lot of things that are grounds for attack on Kamala Harris. So as far as being pro-drug war, she's a war hawk. She supports a lot of the overseas wars. Mass incarceration. Yeah, she's hardcore anti-gun. Hardcore anti-gun. She is pro-government monopoly on healthcare via Medicare for all. Like any other, she supports Bernie's plan, where basically any sort of even competition from the private sector would be banned as far as the healthcare coverage goes. If you're covered on something, private insurance would be banned, like literally outlawed from providing anything that would be a competition to the government's monopoly. So of all these things that she's just absolutely horrible at, that's the tweet that the presidential nominee for the Libertarian Party went with. All of the fodder there, all of the great things you could have hammered this bitch about, and that's where you went. You went with a girl power tweet. Now, I think the staffers eventually got the message, because I know Dave Smith, who I fucking love. If you haven't watched Part of the Problem with Dave Smith is amazing. Just really great stuff that comes out of that guy. He hammered the shit out of her on this. And Dave's an ANCAP. And Dave is, like a lot of people, they're like, fuck, I wish the Libertarian Party did better, at least on the messaging thing. And I think the staffers kind of started getting the hint because they got so many complaints. So they did kind of, get on board and start doing what they should have done from the beginning. I think if you would have started with these tweets right here, and maybe did the one last where you were like, hey, well, I mean, it is a girl, maybe that's good for girls. Like, I can overlook that. I could overlook that if it was, if it followed up a series of tweets bashing Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris consistently avoided intervening in cases involving killings by police, no matter what state she was in. Okay, yeah. Kamala Harris, while millions of Americans were crying out for criminal justice reform, Biden hired Harris, a candidate with an abysmal record of fighting for justice. Yes, that's good stuff. This one's really good. Harris has an abhorrent record as prosecutor. As a senator, Biden enabled her by passing draconian racist laws that resulted in the incarcerations of millions of minorities. Biden said he wanted someone philosophically aligned with himself as his VP pick. He got it. Now, one thing that I would do a bit differently there, those laws, I don't have any grounds to say that those laws were intended to be racist. They just happen to turn out to disproportionately affect black people. And largely because black people were committing those crimes. Like, that's one little stipulation I would make there. But all that, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. There's just so much fodder there for a libertarian, especially somebody who's carrying the party flag, to just rip a new asshole for Kamala Harris. And to start with a girl power tweet is just off-putting. But we are going a bit long here. I have one more topic to cover, and that is Uber. Uber, basically, what would you call it? I wouldn't call it a private cab company. Whatever. I don't have to call it anything. Everybody knows what the fuck Uber is. So Uber, it looks like after that ruling that just happened in California, or I don't know, is it an impending ruling? I heard Peter Schiff talk about this, and that's what brought it to my attention in the first place. But then Peter Schiff was right yet again, because this came out. I'm seeing here from Breaking 911 on Twitter. Uber's CEO says the company will likely shut down service in California after a San Francisco judge ordered Uber to treat their drivers as employees instead of independent contractors. And also, there's a lot there for wording. It's like, oh wow, people on the left, I'm sure, are just like, oh wow, did you have to treat your employees as if they were employees instead of independent contractors? Well, the reason this is going to completely kill Uber in California, and this is such a huge point about the difference between what the laws actually do and what the intention of the law was. See, people on the left, it's been my observation, tend to vote for things just based entirely on intent. You don't see past the intention. Same thing with a minimum wage. You can see that. You can see it with rent control. You see it with price controls in general. You can't see past the intention. I talked about Social Security earlier. Great example. I don't want old people eating cat food. You can't see past the intention. And when you can't see past the intention, you get shit like this. Because when the cost of doing business becomes unaffordable to that business goes away. It either goes out of business or it relocates. Because people aren't in business to lose money. People are in business to make money. So that service that was being provided, again, voluntarily, where people were being compensated for their work, and if you find out, oh my God, I'm actually getting ripped off in this, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do a job that you think you're not being fairly compensated for. Just don't fucking do it. It's that simple. But now, this business is going to leave that entire state. It's not going to be an option for you over there anymore. Something else I think that is worth pointing out here is about how the cab companies, because this happened in New York as well a year or two ago, they tried something similar in New York, and it's because the cab unions are huge, big-time donors for Democrats. So don't you think the cab union, again, this whole corporatist thing, because both parties are fucking corporatists, so if the cab company pays the state in one way or another, whether it's directly up front legally or it's fucking through a back door somewhere, they are buying the power of the state to rig the game for them. What do you expect to happen? Ayn Rand used to talk about this. A really great series of videos, I believe on Liberty Pen here on YouTube. You can definitely search them up on YouTube. Where Ayn Rand went hardcore on why big businesses are the enemies of capitalism. When you can pay the state to rig the game for you, you're going to win. And why the hell would you want to compete? Big businesses, being the enemy of capitalism, as she put it, they don't want competition. Who wants to have to compete when you can have the game rigged for you? I can have my enemies just priced out of the market, legislated, regulated out of the market. Now, why would I not want to do that? And this is just a big trend of, Uber is just the latest going to leave California, because California keeps being California. They keep running people off. All these people, all these content creators, all these people that run businesses there. Elon Musk coming to Texas. Joe Rogan already setting up a studio in Texas. These people are leaving for a reason. You don't have to be like a hardcore fucking ANCAP to understand like how that affects businesses, how that affects people. People want to go somewhere where they have some fucking room to breathe, and they don't have to have their wealth squandered by the state, or at least they go to a place where it's squandered less. It's not really hard to imagine like how this works, guys. But anyways, that's gonna wrap it up here. This will be the second podcast that I've done here, and I think we're right around the mark. I think this is a good place to kind of cut it off here. We're just over like I think the 35-minute mark. So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at autopsy_87. Stick around for the channel. I am enjoying doing these because it's just a never-ending stream of bullshit that it keeps happening, guys. I like to do the one-off videos. I like to do some more commentary videos. But in the meantime, I'll just be doing these because there's just so much shit going on in the world that I find to be fucking insane. But anyways, stay tuned for more, and I will see you guys next time.